everyone, welcome back to 996 to Howl. Now, in my previous video, I did not even mention the fighting number for the Coyotes. I had a whole thing going on. I was going to delve into it, but I missed over it and the video was long enough. So I thought, you know what? Why not take the Herculean effort of trying to make this team look good, gather whatever stats I could that are like probably in the top half of the league in terms of where they are in the stat category, and then talk about fighting, of course, a little bit more in depth. Also, just this morning, afternoon, what have you, Craig Morgan reported that the Coyotes are in advanced, serious discussions with the ASU's new arena, which is going to be completed very soon. And it only holds 5,000 people at the moment. Now, maybe those discussions involved increasing capacity, but not sure how you increase capacity on a building that's pretty much finished. But, it's a lot of talks. I'm sure there's someone in the Coyotes organization doing a cost benefit analysis for the next 3 years or 4 years to see what they can do, what makes sense, what is profitable until that new Tempe arena gets built. And still no confirmation on if the city of Tempe is going to go through with that new arena. So a lot in the air. You know how it is being a Coyotes fan. But let's stick to on ice. So Coyotes, where do you want to start? I mean, let's start at the top. Obviously, it's easier for me to keep track. So hits per game, they got 21 and a half hits per game, 21st in the league. Now you might say, well, that's not pretty good, 21st in the league. But, their hit differential per game is about half a hit in favor of the Coyotes. So the Coyotes have about 880 hits, and then hits given to them are 862-ish, right? Yeah. So, that stat is basically they're hitting more than they're getting hit. And it's in the top half of the league, 14th in the league in terms of, giving hits and taking hits. So that's a good number. That's a positive number. And then you look at shots blocked per game is about 13 and a half, which is 13th in the league. So another good stat that they're in the top half of the league. Their shots blocked differential per game, much like hits differential, the amount of shots they're blocking versus the amount of shots their opponent are blocking their own shots. And they're fourth in the league. So that means in a game, they're blocking shots about 3 shots more than the opposition. Not really sure if that's a good stat, but again, the point of this video is to make the Coyotes look good. So here is a stat where they're fourth in the league in terms of their blocking shots more than the opposition is blocking their shots, which tells me that, the opposition has the puck more and is shooting more against the Coyotes. But number of fights is a big reason why I wanted to make the video. They're third in the league in fights. Last video, they were second in the league. So if I was talking about it in the last video, it would have been better. But the Anaheim Ducks, I guess, had a fight either Monday night or Tuesday night. They're third in the league in fights. Top of the league is Nashville with 29. So Coyotes have 19, the Ducks have 20, Nashville has 29. Unbelievable fighting numbers. But in terms of fights per game, which is kind of silly to break down a fight per game because you can't have half a fight per game. But obviously the Predators have played more games than the Coyotes, and so have the Ducks. So if you put a per game basis to this stat, which is silly, like I said, they're second in the league behind Nashville in terms of fighting per game because they've played less games than Anaheim. So they move up to second place there. But, talking more about fighting, Liam O'Brien leads the league in fighting. No one really talks about this, but he's got 9 fights, leads the league. I love him. Well, I don't love him. It's great to see that he's fighting and trying to create energy. I should have delved down deeper to see whenever he fights, what's the Coyotes' record. I'm sure that would have been a great tidbit. You got 2 national players in second and third place, and then Anaheim with the Laurier at fourth, and then Middleton on San Jose Sharks rounding out the top 5. Interesting, all 5 players are on West Coast teams, and the West Coast has always seems like the tough division, not so much speed and skill, although there is teams that have speed and skill like Colorado. But the West to me, it's always been the tough conference. They don't rack up the points astronomically like some of the Eastern teams. The East is more like free flowing, loosey goosey, high skill, high speed to me. Even though there maybe is like a tough hitting team in that conference, Boston, yeah, maybe just Boston. But it's always interesting to see the discrepancies between the conferences. And that Bill Armstrong's goal for the Coyotes is to build them big, fast, and tough to play against. So O'Brien fit the bill. And then if you look at the past number of fights, the last 5 seasons for only the Coyotes, it's pretty interesting to think about. Talkett's first season, they had 17 fights. So the Coyotes at 19 have already eclipsed 17 and 82, which is Talkett's most number of fights in one season. On that roster, you have Ronaldo, Nick Cousins, Max Domi, maybe threw in a couple of fights here and there. But since then, Talkett's teams didn't really fight. 7 in 82 games in 18-19, and then only 4 in 72 games in 2019-2020 before the stoppage. And then in that shortened season in 2021, only 10 in 56 games played. A bit of an increase because Bill Armstrong brought in John Hayden. Almost threw up in my mouth saying his name again. But they had Hayden, they had Dryden Hunt, and even Johan Larsson threw the gloves a couple of times last season. So to me, it's like when you think of Tocchet and John Shaka, like they're kind of complete opposites. John Shaka was an analytic darling who wanted to play, have more possession, be a threat offensively, and then you think of Tocchet, where it's like, okay, stingy defense, rely on your goaltending, sort of be tough to play against. He's an old school coach, an old school guy. So when you think of his coaching style, it should be tough to play against. But no fights in 4 games, only 4 fights in 72 games played. That season where they started off amazing, first in the Pacific in 2019, and then as the season kept going along, they kept losing a lot and losing momentum. And then in the bubble play-in round, they beat Nashville, but it wasn't really a heated battle. It was more rely on Kemper and try to score goals to win out Nashville instead of facing them head on in terms of fights and hitting and checking and toughness and physicality. And then against the Avalanche, they got just run over in every single department. Didn't even try to be physical with the Avalanche. So yeah, I noticed that discrepancy there. Then when Bill Armstrong finally got control of the team and brought in some heavy players, their fighting increased, and then now it's increased so much where they're second in the league in terms of fights per game. They got 19 fights in 41 games. So just their fighting per game is increased dramatically with the type of personnel Bill Armstrong has brought in. He wants to play a physical game, a tough game. When you come into the desert, it shouldn't be easy. And sometimes that's true. Coyotes are a tough team to play against, but I don't think they put it together for a full 60 minutes, maybe for 15, 20 minutes, maybe a period and a half. They're tough. But sooner or later, like we saw against the Rangers and Penguins, if you just keep putting on the pressure on the Coyotes, they kind of fold. They don't have this stingy defense and the elite goaltending that they used to. So if you keep plugging away, if you're the opposition, keep plugging away, and sooner or later the Coyotes will open up and you'll win the game. So they can be tough for the first period, maybe first half of the game. But it usually falls apart when teams realize, okay, this is actually kind of tough. We got to kind of try hard here. They're not a pushover team. And so one other stat I found that was pretty good, they're 11th in the league, are high danger chances converted. So this means they're actually executing pretty well. I mean, under Tocchet's regime, I always used to say the Coyotes cannot execute. They get glorious chances, but for some reason, the puck just doesn't go in the net. But this season, even though they get few high danger chances because they're not a great offensive team, they lack talent. Whenever they do get those high danger chances, they're converting them into goals. And that relates to their shot percentage. Last video I made where it was pretty high in the league, their shot percentage, I think it's about 8.5 or somewhere there. So even though they don't get a lot of chances, when they do get good chances, they're scoring, which is great to see. A guy like Andrew Ladd has about 6 goals, and he's just in the right place at the right time. Usually when he doesn't shoot often, he's not really in a good high danger area. But when he is, when he's in front of the net, he makes it count, and that's all that matters. I feel like the Coyotes this season do you know, take advantage of the few chances they get and the few chances they generate. And, it's good to see. So that's it. A pretty quick video, I think. Just want to throw out some good numbers where they are in the league. It was really hard to find these numbers. I was reaching a lot with high danger chances converted and even the differentials. But I saw a green number and I said, you know what, let's put it in a video. But mainly the video was to point out they're fighting, they're top in the league in fighting. They usually aren't, even though you think of Rick Tocchet as like, an old style coach, you would think they were, a heavy and physical team to play against, but they didn't play that way. They basically had no identity, to be honest, under the Tocchet 4 seasons. It was basically stingy defense and rely on elite goaltending of Rata and Kemper, which eventually broke both those goalies. And we saw in the 2021 season when their goalies aren't up to par and play average, it's not a recipe for success. And so they have to change the whole makeup of the team, identity. Bill Armstrong brought in some heavy guys, some cactus like players, like he likes to call them. And, even though the Coyotes don't win much games, sometimes there's a fight. Most mainstream viewers of hockey love fighting, even in Gila River Arena. They love to see fights. The crowd goes wild for fights. So it's a part of the game that they started to introduce more. Obviously, if you're a rebuilding team, you're fighting more, you're hitting more, except for Nashville. You see Montreal, in the top of the league in terms of hits per game and hits per 60 minutes. If you're a bad team and you can't really possess the puck, you're hitting a lot. So why not be good at hitting? And so it's interesting to see the Coyotes aren't hitting as much. They're 21st in the league. It could definitely be higher, but it is what it is. So that's it for me. Thanks for watching. If you like what you see, spread the word. And as always, thank you for your support.